Well, hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm here today again with Colleen. Colleen, you want to say hi?
Oh, hi.
And we are excited for our guest today to have her on our podcast again, Fay Johnstone.
Hi, so delighted to be here. Thank you.
Yes, we've had Fay on the podcast before, but it's been a couple of years since we have been able to sit down and talk with you in this in-depth format. And I always love it with Fay because, even though you're in Scotland, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, even though she's in Scotland, I feel like we kind of always circle around each other, and I feel that kind of connection and closeness with you. So it's just good to have this opportunity, though, to kind of sit down and chat with you again. And if you want to hear the previous episode of Fay, you can just search within the podcast. It's Fay, and then it's actually spelled Johnstone, but pronounced Johnston. So that's Johnstone. So you can just search within our podcast and hear the first episode, which a lot's happened since then for all of us. Obviously, I think that was even pre-pandemic. But it was just a really fun episode and talked about a lot. But we're excited to have you back and hear what's going on for you now. So I'll go ahead and read your bio. Fay Johnstone combines over 20 years of Reiki practice with elemental Qigong, plant medicine, and creative shamanism to bring the healing power of nature to assist us with our personal transformation. As well as studying herbal medicine, she ran an organic flower and herb farm in Nova Scotia for some years before returning to the UK and settling in Scotland. The path of the drum and Reiki has led Fay to connect even more deeply with nature and plants. The author of Plant Spirit Reiki and Plants That Speak, Plants That Sing. Fay offers training and retreats from her garden in Fife, Scotland, and her latest book, Shamanic Reiki Drumming, Healing with Sound and Vibration, will be released in September of this year. And I believe that it will be released close to the date of this podcast, of this episode. And so we'll talk just a little bit about that. You can find her at fayjohnston.com, but again, Johnston is spelled Johnstone. So it's Johnstone. Her Facebook profile is Fay J Meditation, and that's Fay, the letter J, Meditation. Instagram is Plants That Speak, and then her YouTube is Fay Johnstone. So welcome to you again. We're so excited to have you here. Do you want to just clarify a little bit about your new book that's going to be and when it will be released?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Hi, everybody. It's great to be back here. I'm really delighted to link Scotland with you all, the wider Reiki community. So that's really fun. My book. The book is called Shamanic Reiki Drumming, Intuitive Healing with Sound and Vibration. So that is. By the time this is released, that will be already out on Kindle, but it will be coming. And obviously, I think most of this audience is in the United States. So it's being released in September for you all. And if you look on, any bookseller, so Barnes and Noble, the big one beginning with A, or your local bookstore should be able to get the book for you. Whichever format you like. And actually, if it's September, then I will be doing a book launch. So anyone who's pre-ordered it or got it, get in touch, because then you can get in touch with me, let me know that you've got the book, and you'll get an invite to the book launch, and there'll be a drumming circle online. And so it's really anyone who's interested in the drum or working with the drum already, this is the book for you. And there you go, that's my plug. But yeah, you'll be able to get hold of it by the time this is out. So there's some sort of treats and fun things happening to promote it, so you can get involved with those too.
It looked like you were going to hold it up.
Oh yeah,
Do you
there you go.
Yes.
I think it's backwards, but you get the idea.
No,
Shamanic
it's
Reiki drumming. There's a good lovely picture of the drum there, actually, isn't there?
Love it.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm proud of this one. Number 3. Who would have thought? Hey, I certainly didn't think. I didn't know.
Isn't that so true? Well, for people that haven't, particular or haven't had a chance to listen to the first episode, why don't you just give us a little bit of your history, what brought you to Reiki? You've been a Reiki master, teacher, practitioner for a long time now, and then kind of where you're at now. And I would love to get into that topic because, Fay, when we talk to our guests beforehand, we always have them send a little bit about, what we're going to talk about in the episodes. And I loved your authenticity in what we were talking about, just being in the place of really listening to Reiki. But also, I know people will want to hear kind of your backstory as well.
Okay, thank you, Robyn. I'll just dive in then. So, kind of, the usual story, Reiki definitely found me. I wasn't looking for it, or I didn't think I was. And it was actually a friend of mine just said, hey, do you want to do this, Reiki with me? And I didn't even know what it was, that kind of story. And obviously the weekend of learn, when you learn Reiki, it just, it's fireworks for me. Everything, things started to light up. It was like rainbows and all of the kind of a lot of things which I think I had been looking for. I was in my 20s. I was working in London. I wasn't very happy, and so actually Reiki was this wonderful way of it was very magical for me. But at the same time, just to share this part, I was really shy, and it was, learning Reiki now, it's different for people. People have heard of Reiki, they've heard of energy healing. Not that, I think people actually have a lot of misconceptions around what perhaps Reiki is. But at the time I learned, nobody really knew about Reiki. So for someone who was quite shy and lacking in confidence, it was, I wasn't one of those people who was just out there, raking everybody and everything I could get my hands on. I was quite shy. So it was very much for me, a Reiki level 1 was very much the personal process, that personal path of self-healing, self-development, and it was really all about confidence for me. But I did do my Reiki level 2 very shortly after Reiki 1 with the same teacher, and it was because I had a job where I was doing a lot of traveling, and I really wanted to have that connection with Reiki and the distance healing while I was on my travels. So and again, I was always one of these part-time, or I was a closet Reiki practitioner. I was pretending, to do my office job, and be into all that, which I was doing sort of very half-heartedly, really. And then I was, I do a lot of Reiki meditation and self-practice in the evenings, particularly to help with stress levels. And, and you're thinking about it now with hindsight, you think, well, one of the reasons I was so stressed is because actually I was not really aligned at all with my soul or anything that I wanted to do. I was just doing this job because I thought that's what we should do. I thought I needed to get a career, all the things. That's kind of with me, in my 20s. And still, when I moved back to the UK and I started to get more settled, and I really had this awakening with the plants, and it started. I always attribute it to Reiki, and anyone who's read my book Plant Spirit Reiki, where I talk about connecting with Reiki and the plants, more of that story is in there. But really, I just sort of had a moment one day where I just brought all these plants back to this small, tiny apartment where I was living in France, and that was the moment I realized that I kind of let those plants in, and it was so connected to my sort of Reiki awakening and that sensitivity and that sort of connecting with the unseen and trusting. And so my Reiki path brought me back to the UK, and again I was, so this is sort of even more. I was working I was working 4 days a week, and then, I was Reikiing. I had a sort of, I had my little tiny business card of Reiki, and I was still very hush hush about how, this is me, I do Reiki, that whole, I was just really quite shy about it, because the thing that I didn't like, and actually, interestingly, I still don't really enjoy it today, with social media and everything, just that sort of having to explain it all the time. And back then, I'm talking about 20 years ago, you still really had to explain what Reiki was. And I think I found that quite hard, because in myself, I didn't really have the words for it. It was an experience. And so yeah, I ended up really saying, well, people, you've got to experience it, to make sense of it for yourself, to have this experience. It's a felt experience. So that was how I kind of managed to get around that. But I was still very much the closet Reiki person. And I eventually started, and this is actually, it started with the drum, funnily enough. So when I learned, I did the Reiki drumming technique with a lady called Sarah Gregg, and she just brought it back. She just studied it in the US, and I think she was the person who brought it to the UK, and I was like one of her first students. So again, that was really new, but I felt so drawn to the drum. It was just like this little magnet, and it felt like I had been doing this for my whole life. And it was actually through the drum that I started to open up a little bit more, because I started to teach meditation. So rather than teach Reiki, I was teaching meditation. And actually, I started to use the drum in my Reiki, in these meditation classes, because I thought I was seeing people really struggle just focusing on their breath. And obviously, as an energy practitioner, I could feel the sense in the air of the stress that was going on in everybody. So what I decided to do is bring my drum to the session, to get people, to shift those brainwaves, to get people into that state of relaxation. It's so much quicker, and it felt like we were cheating. And then actually what that kind of turned into me offering it in the lunch hour once a month in my workplace, where I was working, which was again, that was a bit, and again, this was really almost like coming out of the closet for me, admitting that I do this spiritual technique. I have this practice, this healing practice, which is, again, and still back then, it was unusual. It was woo-woo. It wasn't science. And so, but really, so in a sense, the drum brought me out of the closet. And you think, well, of course it did. It's so loud. You can't do that quietly. But so it definitely really opened up my Reiki practice, if you like, for me there. And I've just lost my track. I was going to say something else. Some little gem was going to come in, but it's gone. But then, as you mentioned, the plants were, they were really talking to me. I was making all my kind of herbal potions, and so I'm raking, I'm drumming, I'm working, and then I'm coming back and I'm making herbal potions and foraging, and it's getting connected to my tiny back garden, which was like, about 3 meters by 3 meters. This was my land. And then my partner and we moved to Nova Scotia, and we bought the flower farm, and we threw ourselves into it. And that was where, again, another sort of, this was really following the nudge. And actually, though, I have to say, it's only recently that I've had that epiphany or realized that I think when I did my Reiki master teacher training, or Reiki master training, that was the catalyst, because shortly, it wasn't long after I moved to Nova, or rather, my training was shortly before I moved, and I think it was the catalyst. And whenever I teach Reiki Master, and I don't know if Colleen and Robyn have the same experience, but I always say to people, this is going to bring super change into your life. You never know what that change is going to be. It might be a relationship thing, a job thing, a home thing. For me, it was a home thing, and I moved to Nova Scotia, and again, that was kind of all. So I really attribute that to to Reiki. That Reiki master training. I think I did the Reiki master training, and then actually when I realized I was moving, I thought, well, I've got to do the teacher training because I can take that with me. But I am a real slow burner. I did my teacher training or my Reiki master training 9 years after my initial attunement. And I always say to students, it's not a race. There's no, and I think I'm a really slow learner, and I'm slow to maybe learn the lessons I need to learn. So I just go at this quite slow, steady pace. Which is, and I've never really, even in Canada, I was really connecting with the plants, and that's what my first book, Plants That Speak, Souls That Sing, was about. And then I wrote the other one, Plant Spirit Reiki, about connecting Reiki and the plants together, and that was this whole opening up for me. But again, it was always combined with Reiki, the plants, the drumming, just really this expanded state of consciousness of really connecting to that unseen world and opening and letting that magic in. But now here back in Canada, so I moved we moved to Scotland after being in Canada, which is where I am now. And, we've been here for about, I don't know, I feel like I've been here for quite some time now. I can't really do the math. Can't really do the maths anymore. But what's happened when we moved back to Canada, back to Scotland, I thought to myself, I'm not going to teach Reiki. No, I said to myself, we'll see. Okay, this is what, and Reiki kind of says, yeah, we'll see. I'll show you. I'll guide you. And this is really, I would say my path has been very guided by Reiki, because we'd moved. So we sort of, if you picture the scene, we'd moved from this really, large old farmhouse in Canada with 35 acres and all these barns full of stuff and the flowers and the herbs and all of this stuff. And we kind of crammed ourselves somehow into a 2-bedroom small apartment in this lovely village in the Scottish borders, with a tiny garden, tiny apartment. So I'd said to myself, right, I'm not going to be doing. I can't teach from here. I haven't got a treatment space. Little did I know, Reiki was like, well, that's not going to stop us. And so, people were coming, doing treatments from the space. Sometimes have to sort of move dogs and, people, out of the way. All of the stuff was, come into the spare bedroom, which is actually the Reiki, was the Reiki room, and that went on for a number of years. And even teaching there was one time, I don't know how we managed it. There was about 6 of us, which again, I think that's not massive if you teach massive groups, but for 6 people and myself sharing Reiki in what is essentially a living room, dining room space in a small 2-bedroom flat. It's quite, intimate.
Yeah.
But that was how my Reiki practice, that was how it was meant to develop, if you like. It was never, it was just very organic, I suppose. And I enjoy the fact that actually when I learned Reiki, I learned sitting on the floor in somebody's living room in South London. And it was all very, the telling of the story and the sharing of Reiki. And in a sense, that's how my teaching has progressed. I don't rent big studios. It's all just kind of small groups, just connected little network of people who are learning and sharing Reiki. And through that, the writing is something which has really surprised me. That sort of, I guess, we moved from the flat, and now we're in this amazing place with this amazing garden, which is a place where I feel really much more grounded and able to, share teaching spaces, if you like, with people in the garden. So this is kind of one space where I'm at now. But also I'm in this place which we have chatted about before we started recording, which is the space of transition with Reiki. I feel definitely that now I'm moving away from not being a practitioner, because you're always going to be a practitioner,
Yeah.
But the one-to-one sessions for me are getting kind of less and less, and I'm just not feeling very drawn to be putting myself out there and saying, hey, you know, come and have Reiki with me, or I can really help you with that. I much prefer almost to refer somebody to another practitioner I know, or a student who is doing Reiki. And I'm taking a different journey now with Reiki. And I have Reiki courses online. I still teach via Zoom and so on. But again, there's a real shift which is happening within my practice. And it on the one hand, it's a bit scary. It's quite intimidating, because I'm thinking, hang on a sec, you know, what's going on now? So I'm really having to lean in and trust that the journey is exactly what it's meant to be. And, you know, everything I've been doing is just leading me forward with this space. But it's definitely for me a time of transition. And I know so many other people in, not necessarily in the Reiki field, but who have been, you know, at the top of their game, or doing a specific career for like the last 10, 15 years, and who are suddenly just going, oh, you know, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm doing something else. So there's change in the air for me. But I can't really envisage, if you like, a life that would be without Reiki, without my drum, without the plant medicine. You know, I think it's just really a very subtle transition, and almost the voice that keeps talking to me is really about finding a new way of doing things, a new way of working with perhaps Reiki or in shamanism, that a new way. And I feel almost like there is a new way coming through that it hasn't kind of materialized yet. So in a sense, that's what I feel like I'm holding the torch for and asking guidance for from Reiki, is this new way of doing things, of finding that community and sharing. Because I truly believe that when we're aligned, and you know, Reiki has shown me this, that when you're aligned, you know, like when the stars are aligned, things are flowing, things are easy, you know, clients come, the right people come and flow and everything. And I just haven't felt, I've been having to kind of really tune in and think, you know, does this feel like it's flowing? Does this feel like it's the right fit? And it's hard, but I haven't quite managed to, but in that process of just reevaluating, and then the hard part of releasing perhaps those things that are not that I don't want to carry forward, I suppose, as part of my Reiki path. So that's a very long answer to my story, isn't it?
Well, I think that was part of the reason that, you know, I liked how you sent in your bio the authenticity of where you're at and why we were wanting to kind of talk about this piece of it. And you're in the middle of it, which sometimes is a little harder to talk about because you're listening. You're in this very sacred time of listening around it all. And like you said, you don't know where it's leading, and yet you know that there's things that are not where you're heading any longer. And it will always be, you know, Reiki, you're going to have a Reiki practice in some way, shape, or form, and a drumming practice and a plant practice in some way, shape, or form. But you're also in this really sacred time of listening to your inner truth, listening to the energy, listening to all of the plants, listening to all of these practices that you have. And like you said, there are these times where we have these really big moments or these big periods of producing, right? You've written 3 books. You've had that whole story that you just talked about of, you know, all of this part of your practice that has just come through. Not that it's a lot of work, but it's also been flowing. And now you're in this transition. And like you said, it's not just in Reiki practices, it's also in other parts of our life, whether people have a professional practice or not. And that the energy, your tools, all of this is supporting you in this time frame as you're listening. And I think it's an important piece to talk about, because all of us go through it in different time frames in different ways. And how do you navigate that? And that's what you're in the position. That's what it sounds like. I shouldn't assume. It sounds like that's where you're in. And so I loved that this is part of what you felt called to talk about, because I think that there's so much truth within it. And there's so much, it's very genuine. And I think that that's really important to have these conversations, because it also gives other people permission to admit it, for lack of a better word, that they may be going through something similar, again, whether it's through their Reiki practice or through an entirely different topic entirely. I do want to say real quick, you have an Airbnb in your property in Fife, Scotland, right? I thought I heard you say that. A yurt?
Yeah,
Let me just say that real quick.
Yeah, the yurt.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to go stay in Fife, Scotland, Fay does have a yurt, and it's an Airbnb in Scotland.
It's actually a pretty magical space, and as is the garden space where we have landed. When we found this place, it was one of those, I couldn't get out of the car because I was so excited. It was like my legs turned to jelly. I never knew this place existed, as in this location, let alone, the house and the garden. It was very much fortuitous, very meant to be. So the garden space there is very, very special in terms of it's the healing space. And yeah, I wanted a yurt for about 17 years. And finally, the guy who I'd emailed 17 years ago about having a yurt, he said, yeah, I can make you one. So I just wanted to share that, because some people sometimes go, wow, you've got my dream yurt, or I want a yurt too. And I think, I wanted a yurt for 17 years. So that dream has come true for me, and it's really actually very beautiful to share it with people who come and stay. And obviously, if you come and stay, you can have some treatment or just simply relax. So that's actually a space. And interestingly, I'm listening as to what the future holds. And yeah, I think I'm going back. I feel in a sense that I'm definitely, well, firstly, I love the way, Robyn, that you called it sacred time, because that really feels very special. It feels like, oh yeah, I'm really honoring this time, rather like the trees in the winter time. That's a sacred time. They've just been really busy. They've given their seeds and their fruits and everything, and they've dropped their leaves, and then they're kind of resting. So that is where I am. And so thanks for sort of almost seeing that as, because it is sacred time to really deeply listen and take stock and review almost like the things that are on the table. And it does take courage to kind of go, what, this doesn't really fit anymore with the person I'm becoming, or the person who I want to be in the world, or the type of healer I want to be. And what was coming to mind when you were speaking is the questions which I often ask are, what is needed here? And I found that through my shamanic practice and the working with the plants, that is almost like the first question that I ask the plant is, what is needed here? As in, how can I help you? And it's almost, so going back to this idea of being of service. And I feel a sense of when, so I feel like, in a sense, those are the questions that I'm asking, and I'm trying to almost like take myself out of it. And whereas I think for many years I have been in that idea of, I've been wearing that hat of I don't like to say the word, but like a spiritual entrepreneur. That's the sort of word that you might hear, or a Reiki teacher, shamanic teacher, whatever you want to say. But I've been wearing that hat, and it's almost really in the last year I thought, what? Perhaps it's time to wear another hat, and just playing with scenarios, ideas, and just looking. And that's why I'm really interested in sort of opening and asking to be shown a new way of doing things. because certainly in my experience, and I know that, many of us kind of shifted to online work during the pandemic. And it was, amazing because we were able to help lots of different people. And I love, those lovely benefits of online. But I kind of was like, yeah, I should, and this is the fatal word in anything that I do. Oh, I should do this. I should, and it's like fatal. It's like signing my, that's not going to work, or it's not that it's not going to work, but it's just not going to fill me up. And so for example, I created some online courses, and they're great. They're really good. The content's great. It's me on video, yes, and explaining things and doing all the things I would do in person. But for me, I feel that I created them because I felt that I should. And I also felt, so in a sense of, they don't fill me up in the way that perhaps chatting to somebody on Zoom, or meeting somebody face to face, or teaching in person, or being in the garden space, for example, might, and watching how people interact with plants and so on. So there's just these small things that I'm noticing about some of the decisions I've made over the years, and this, and on sort of being in the Reiki business, shall we say, that I'm just reevaluating. Go, you know what? I don't have to do that. I can let that go, or I can just not focus on that anymore and focus on something else. And this is also, it was going very much, I was definitely going through a phase, and I mentioned the fact that I feel like I'm stepping back from being a practitioner into something else, because I don't really often now do one-to-one treatments with people. The sort of one-to-one space for me has moved into something else. It's not, oh yeah, let's do Reiki, or let's do some shamanic Reiki together, or with the plants. It's shifted for me. And actually, but it was for quite some time, I sort of almost was like, no, you're a Reiki practitioner, you have to do this, you have to be working one-to-one with people. But I think if I stand, in my, really authentic self, and I connect to the earth, and I connect into Reiki, and I really align myself, do I want to work in the way that I've been working like that with one-to-ones? And the answer is no, I don't. And so that's the guidance, that's the part that I need to follow, not the thing that I think I should do because I'm a Reiki practitioner. And of course I put out that thing and I say, yeah, I'm a healing sessions for an hour, or what, the things that we go through to kind of shape what we offer. And so just listening, but it's hard because I have carried a long time. So the downfalls for me have been I should do it. Anything where I say I should do it, I have to now. And now I know myself, I've got that self-awareness, and I go, no, just go and meditate on that should, and find out where that's coming from. And because it's not going to lead you into, yeah, I really want to do this, I want to express this, I want to share this with people, the should, and I definitely have suffered from, I call it comparison-itis, when I see others perhaps doing things or offering things, and if I'm not offering them, then I'm down on myself, or I think that I should because this is what other people are doing. And so I definitely see over the years how in my effort to put myself out there in this spiritual world of teaching and healing, I've made some decisions which now I don't feel that I'm aligned with. And so this is the hard part, is really doing that listening and perhaps getting into that space where it doesn't matter what others are doing. I just need to be true to me and what I'm being called to do and act on and listen to and step into. And I really feel, a lot of people are being called to step into, I feel like we're all at the moment being called to really step into our truth and that alignment with our divine self. And this is what Reiki does. But for me, it's done it in a very, very slow, creative way. So I'm still listening. And I had a moment, one of those key moments, and it was last January. I was doing a journey with some friends. We were doing I put up my hand to be a guinea pig. I was like, I'll help you work out this new therapy that you're doing, or I'll do it. So we had to do a journey, and in this journey, I was taken down to a treasure ship. And in the treasure ship was this beautiful treasure chest. And I was like, but why isn't it being opened? So there was this whole story about this treasure chest that wasn't being opened. And then obviously I had this moment of realization that I needed to open the chest, etc. And it was a very, very blissful, joyful, sad journey, because it was really like my soul saying, I just want to write books. And I came out of that journey and I'm like, really? Is that what I want to do? And again, I'm completely like, it was like, throw me a curveball, or maybe I said I'm a slow learner, maybe it's that. And so I've kind of just sat with that. How can I work with Reiki, or writing books, or expressing a voice that needs to come through? So that's kind of where I'm at, listening. But I feel we're moving into a space of, no, it's not really service for me. It's dollars in my bank account and the kudos. It's really about the being of service to the greater community, and that's where we're all at now, as healers, as people who work in the light room. It's like, what is needed for everybody on the earth to come into harmony. So that's the kind of piece that I'm listening to. But knowing me, it's going to take a while, because I'm a slow learner, like I said.
I wrote an article called Reiki Heals the Shoulds, because I think the shoulds are their shoulds. And sometimes they are relevant. Sometimes they are helpful. And then other times they're such a burden and guide us in ways that are not authentic to us. And for myself, I would say, out of all the mind chatter and messy mind that I can be in, the shoulds are high on the list. So everywhere from, I should go out and walk, or I should do the dishes, or I should write my article. I mean, they can be endless. And I think it can be really helpful to work with Reiki with those, to help the discernment about what's real with the shoulds, what isn't real, or I shouldn't say what isn't real, but what isn't in alignment. And then, also priorities, like getting to what is the priority, because in some cases, like you're talking about your transition, and some people want to get into having their Reiki business and they're all excited about all of that. And then, we both, Robyn and I, had to make the same decision with being a one-on-one practitioner, just simply because our teaching schedule is so full that, we now aren't able to take new clients. And the same thing, we refer them to Danny that works with us. And she does a great job, and it's wonderful to have someone to refer them to. But I think the shoulds for me have been one of the things that Reiki has helped me with the most. And the other thing that I hear maybe in your process is that part of it is also a shift in identity. That, when I was sold my business as a fiber artist to become a Reiki practitioner, I had to really transition that personal inward identity, that I didn't have the new one yet. And I didn't know what that meant. And identity sounds like, there's the superficial version of our identity, and then there's that in-depth inner truth of our authentic identity. And that transition part is a big piece to listen to and to hear, like, what does that look like? Who am I in this new phase? And then it also sounds like, sometimes, because I work a lot with the cycles, from the medicine wheel cycles, and as you mentioned, the trees in the wintertime, and when you're transitioning from the endings of one way and the new beginnings of the next way, and sometimes you cross over and the new beginnings are completely where you're focused, and the endings are ended. But then there's that sacred time where you're in that process of the endings and the new beginnings. And some days it's still in the endings, and some days it's still in the new beginnings. And so I guess what I would like to ask you is, what are you using? What tools are you using to navigate through this time?
Well, thank you, Colleen, for asking that. And also, everything very perceptive, everything that you said, these shifts in identity, really. And actually, just to add, I'm going to answer your question in a minute, but I want to just answer one thing. When that first book of mine came out 5 years ago, I actually sort of almost had to formally give myself permission to be an author, because I've never put that up. I was never that person at school who wanted to write a book, or was good at English or anything like that. And I thought I was many things, but I hadn't kind of even considered in my world that I could be an author or writer. And so, there was a process there around accepting that identity. So the tool, I love, I really enjoy my self Reiki practice is actually really something. Isn't it funny how you go, I do it every day. And I think people don't believe you that you do it every day, but you just do, don't you? It's part of who you are. It's so second nature to be doing that. I really enjoy also meditating and just creating sacred space. And actually, that's been one of my things this year. Is it was almost like, what does my soul want to do this year? Create space. So there's a space I go to in the garden, or a yurt, for example. So I just love to create sacred space and kind of ceremonial space, even if it's just for me to sit in and to journal on a question, or to sit in gasho on a question, or to self-treat. So those are sort of definitely the if you like, the mainstays of the things which I am naturally drawn to doing. I often journey with my drum if I've got a specific question. If there's something that I've bumped into that feels if there's something that I've bumped into that I feel like, I've got to heal that, then I'll go to Reiki first, and then I'll journey if there's something that I need to know a little bit more information about. I also really enjoy connecting with the elements, and I was sharing with you both in that email that when I was thinking, okay, well, what do I want to talk about on this podcast? What do I want to share? What do I think is going to be really beneficial to the audience who's listening? And we live by the sea, so I was walking my dogs along the beach, and I was kind of asking the sea and the wind, to share with me what is needed here. And I find actually going for a walk like that. Now, I'm really fortunate because I live in the countryside. So I've got woods, I've got, a seashore, I've got my garden and so on. I've got a relative kind of peace and a lot of nature connection. So for me, just really connecting in with that, and in a way, and I think Reiki actually helps us to do that, because when we get into that Reiki space, when we kind of turn Reiki on, connect to Reiki, what I find is like I get out of the way, my stuff isn't there anymore, and I'm in the Reiki space, so I'm able to connect to the earth and the wind and the rain and the sea, and then I'm able to really feel all the answers, feel for the responses that I'm getting. So, and I actually really also enjoy, I guess I'm a writer, so I like writing and journaling. But again, because of the tools that we have, when we practice Reiki, like I said, lighting a candle, creating sacred space, sending a prayer out, calling in Usui, for inspiration, calling in spirit guides to hold me, and then it's like, well, I'm just going to journal a bit on how I feel. But it's for me, it's about calling in that support, whether it's the natural world, whether it's my garden, whether it's the unseen, or the ancestors, or the Reiki lineage that is behind me and around me. And I feel that the simple things just feel so much more supported when I bring in that kind of sacred honoring, really. So that those, I would say, is how I work with that. But there's the simple things like having a cup of tea with my feet on the ground, and I kind of, in a sense, I simplify it really a lot, just inviting Reiki to flow, not feeling the need to beam Reiki out or to connect, hold Reiki. If I'm drinking tea, I can't do that, but just inviting in Reiki and kind of inviting to be guided. That's kind of always having that invitation, of inviting in that connection. But actually, something that I will share, because this is new actually since we have last connected, is that I'm now a teacher of elemental Qigong, and this I have found a wonderful accompaniment to my Reiki practice, and to really kind of grounding the energy body. And so anybody listening, find a Qigong video online, do some Qigong. It's really been a practice which has transformed my connection to my energy, if you like. Even though you would think that after 20 years of Reiki, I had a pretty good idea of that, these practices of Qigong really opened up a little bit more for me, which I found almost like a fundamental link, very much a foundation piece, which was perhaps missing in my Reiki practice. So really simple things about connecting in with the earth through the balls of the feet, and connecting to that lower dantian in the belly. This kind of practice for me, again, helps me to feel and connect, really to feel very, very centered and grounded, and have my sense of presence. And then when I've got that energetic sense of presence, that's when I can make clearer decisions, because that's when I'm connected to the truth of who I am, not the, I should do this, or not the shiny course that looks wonderful, if only I could do this, or the next thing. It's almost like actually being present and not chasing the future, not chasing that identity, or that new job, or the new piece of business, or the new course, or project like a book, but actually just being very, very present in my energy body, connected to the elements, part of the natural world, which we are. And then almost like that future, it just comes towards you. It becomes you, or you become it, because you're in that now moment of being truly present with who you are. And because obviously we are not alone, we're really connected to a wide web of things. So it's that anything that helps me connect to that and helps me feel supported is a practice that I kind of adopt and will do again and again. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I love that. Love that description of not chasing the future, but letting it come to you, or just to be in it. Took me years to, and I don't even know if I'm still there yet with the be here now.
Yeah.
I'm, that for me has been perplexing. Like, what does that mean exactly? And I'm pretty highlighted by you talking about Qigong.
I thought the same thing.
I know, it was like,
especially for you.
Oh, I want to do this.
I've heard a lot of people talk about Qigong in the same way, well, especially recently, but then Colleen, I thought the same thing for you specifically.
Yeah. So can you describe a little bit more about that practice for anyone that doesn't really know what that means? I mean, I have a sense of it, but now when you said just go to YouTube, and like, oh, I'm going to do that.
I should have it. I will send you a link. If there's a link to one of my videos on my website, I can send it to you and people can have a go. So the Qigong, there's many different sort of lineages, if you like, or type styles of Qigong. And I think in a way we're very familiar with, we've heard of Tai Chi. So everyone has this idea of what Tai Chi is. And so everybody tends to think that Qigong is the same. And it kind of is, and it isn't, okay? So what I would describe Qigong as is it's predominantly a standing practice. So it's almost like a mindful movement meditation practice. So you stand, and the way I was taught is we have obviously this a physical movement. So you might do a lovely kind of opening of the arms and reaching up to the sky and sweeping down the energy body, as an example. So that would be the movement. But the way I was taught really was the other type of Qigong. So we do a movement, but we also have an internal reflection on it. And this is the piece where I've really learned, because I've really learned about where energy flows, how it feels. So it's been for me, it's been a way of really sensing into my energy body. But essentially, if you ask me, what do? You stand for an hour. You stand for an hour with soft knees, spine aligned, head floating up, to the guiding star at the top. And then you do, depending on the style of Qigong, you do a series of movements where you might be moving your arms. Your breath tends to kind of flow with the movement. And these movements will stimulate the meridians in the body. And generally, we do these movements to release stagnant energy and to open up the energy channels, the receiving channels, which generally run from sort of the front body. So you tend to receive from the earth, for example, through the balls of the feet, all the way up all the way up the insides of the legs into the lower dantian. So the lower dantian is a couple of fingers below the belly. I mean, in Reiki, we call it the hara. That's the space. So in a sense, my teacher used to describe the lower dantian to me as your rechargeable battery. So whatever energy practice you're doing, you're bringing this energy into your rechargeable battery in your hara, in your lower dantian, because that is going. And then this is the way it was all described to me, and this is why it's very, very beautiful. And this is why for me it is this missing link that perhaps I wasn't taught during my Reiki practice, but I teach it now when I teach. So if we cultivate this energy center in the lower dantian, which is the hara, so I think a couple of fingers below the belly button inside the body is this field, this elixir field of energy. So this is the lower dantian. So if by doing gentle movements of, and they're generally, we're moving the arms around, we're breathing, there's lots of different types of Qigong movements. There's medical Qigong, there's that was developed by a kind of military guy throughout Chinese history. There's all sorts of different styles of Qigong. So whatever you do, it involves these gentle movements and breath work, standing. So you're cultivating and you're bringing in this energy into the lower dantian. And then what naturally happens, and obviously at the same time, you're releasing stagnant energy from the system. What naturally happens is this energy center from the lower dantian is going to bubble up, because it will start, and I see it when I'm teaching people. I'm telling people, yeah, we're going to have the hands at a certain level, and then after a few minutes, about 5 minutes, I see people's hands moving. They're moving higher, and it's because the energy is building. So when the lower dantian is kind of filled, it's full, it's connected to the earth, it's aligned, it's energized, naturally the energy flows upwards, and the next place it stops is in the heart. And then you cultivate this space in the heart. And this is where I think Reiki tends to focus a little bit more kind of on the heart rather than perhaps in the hara, and down into the earth. So, but anyway, once we get to the heart, then again, we're cultivating this energy here. We're moving the energy around. Once this is full, once this heart is being loving, so we can be loving, we can be compassionate, we're full of forgiveness when we are rooted and connected and full in this lower dantian. And then once we get to the stage where we're loving, we're giving, we're compassionate, etc., and then the energy moves up into our special third eye and our crown area, where we then feel and connect to the intuition, to the divine, to the greater, higher, and a more expanded state of consciousness. So this is how this sort of beautiful line of energy, this column of light, which is what we are, was described to me. And that is almost forefront in my Qigong practice. This is what I'm doing. I want to be grounded, connected to the earth, recharge my batteries, so that I have the energy to be in my heart space, being loving, being compassionate, forgiving, and kindness. And then when this is full and this is nurtured and this is cared for through my practice, it can fill up and over and connect me to that intuitive, all-knowing sense of connection. And so, yeah, Qigong is a series of movements depending on what type of Qigong you practice, and all connect to the Chinese meridians, the meridian system. So again, that links a little bit to Reiki. So what I feel we're really fortunate at, to be in the West, is that we learn Reiki. We've learned this Western style of Reiki, and it's so beautiful. We're lucky that we're able to learn this technique, but also we're lucky that we're able to dip in and use tools and learn tools from other areas as well. So we can learn Qigong, we can practice that, even though that from China, Reiki's from Japan. There's this kind of borders getting in the way of actually these really ancient practices, which are they're all energy, so they're all helping us connect. And really, I feel that really, whether we're practicing Reiki, Qigong, or these other practices, we're really learning about ourselves. We're really learning about kind of the magic that we carry and can share with others, and just about sort of what I would learn most of all with Qigong is it's just not about doing. It's about being. So I would be standing in Qigong and I could hear my brain saying, or my mind going, well, when are we going to do something? When are we going to do like a move, a posture? Imagine, I'll liken it to sort of, let's say you're standing in mountain pose at yoga, because I know lots of people might be familiar with yoga, and you're thinking, right, well, when are we going to do downward dog? When are we going to do it? When are we going to do it? So my mind would be talking to me the whole time. When are we doing it? And obviously the point of Qigong is to be. We're being because we're energetic beings. And so that's what I found really fascinating. And that's almost what I feel is dripping through into the Reiki practice, is being Reiki. I'm not just doing it. I'm not necessarily practicing it as a practitioner or a teacher or other ways. I'm actually just being Reiki. I'm embodying the Reiki principles, and I'm connected to Reiki through the small things that I do. And that vibration, that higher frequency, when I sort of take myself out of the way and I'm just simply being, I'm not trying to achieve something, I'm not moving towards things. That is the sort of, for me, it's this sort of essence. So I feel that that's really coming through for me, this being Reiki, rather than kind of the doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. Actually, that's a whole lineage of Reiki is about that too. I mean, I'm sure multiple, but I know when we had Franz Stina on our podcast, I'm not sure if you had a chance to listen to that episode, Faye, but that is how he teaches about Reiki, and his Reiki practice is about being Reiki and how that ripples out, in his life and his practice, and that idea of just embodying it at all times, and that there's, not a lot of doing to it. How do you just be it? And I think that is a piece that we are also lucky, as you said, to be able to have this knowledge, this ancient knowledge and wisdom from other cultures that allow us to learn the tools to do this kind of work. Because in our Western culture, we don't really have that concept. It is very much about doing. I'm sure there's, I'm sure I'm missing some aspects of the culture that allows for that. But I think that it is very much what people are being called to in general and through other ancient practices, because there's many other cultures, indigenous cultures, that also have that concept within their culture, whereas we don't as much. And I think many of us are being called to that. And I love your listening around that, because it's really hard in this culture. We're always called to produce, to do, to continually moving forward. Especially, I don't know how much it is in Scotland, but here in America, it certainly is the predominant culture of do. But I like how you said we're lucky to be able to learn from these other cultures around these concepts and these ideas. And I know it's also in Buddhist culture and very many other cultures and practices and religions. And so yeah, I think that's really fascinating. And I think it's also that people are listening around that, and listening around moving towards that, because there is a really big want for that. That might be the wrong word to use. Maybe it's a need, maybe it's a calling, maybe it's a listening for people, that they are very much in this culture. I know many other cultures already do it, so I don't mean it that way. I don't mean to do that, but in our Western culture, there is many people that are being called to that. And I think that's beautiful that we are, and it's not to dismiss the aspects of Western culture. I don't mean to dismiss that, because there's benefits of that too. So it's not that I'm dismissing that. I just love that there is this balance that is starting, like so many people are hearing that voice. So many people are, how do I get to this place? How do I do this? And sometimes we need to be able to be in that way amidst our jobs, amidst our doing, amidst all of this stuff that we have that is, it's not a reality, that that so many of us have to be able to, how do we get to there even in the midst of our Western culture, of our jobs, of, needing to have the roofs over our head and the food on our table and all of these things that are also a reality for us. And so just that idea that, as kind of you're speaking about, that these are the practices that can help us to get there, to quiet the noise, quiet the chaos, and bring us into presence.
Yeah, and I think for me also the idea of this idea of being, I mean, it's very hard, isn't it? Because we do want to do, and I find this is why it's weird when I do Qigong, I find it so much easier to practice outside. And I think that's because obviously I feel really connected to nature anyway, and it's much easier for me. Whereas if I practice inside, then the mind goes, oh, you need to hoover. Or if it's in the office, I'm like, oh, well, I could just send that email. I'll just still do this thing, but I'll just, and obviously I'm not, not Qigong if I'm doing an email. You only do one thing. And it's, so actually for me, there is a piece around kindness to self, allowing myself. So I'm sort of like, not only am I giving myself permission to have a new identity or shift identities, but I'm allowing myself, sort of giving myself permission to do less, to drop a ball, to go, what, I can't carry the rucksack, the suitcase, the handbag, and all the grocery shopping at the same time. I've got to drop something. And actually, this is something I often say to some of my coaching clients. When we really want something, we're hoping for a new opportunity. I'm going to have to listen to my own medicine as this comes out of my mouth, I'm realizing, because I'm going to share it with you and then I go, yeah, Faye, you need to listen to that. So, but what I often say is, if we're carrying all the things, if we're doing, which as you know, we have been, that is the culture that we have been brought up in the West, that it's good to do, it's like a badge of honor to be busy, that kind of thing. And I think, and as you've said, it's definitely changing. But if we're carrying all the things, I thought I'd say, and I was to hand you, say, hey, Robyn, I've got a suitcase full of $5 million in here, your dream home, you're all set for life. Here it is. I'm handing it to you. Like, if you are carrying all the things, if you are doing all the things, your energy is so tied up that you cannot do something as simple as reach out your hand and take an opportunity, even when they're staring you in the face. So I'm just listening to my medicine as I'm speaking this.
I'm listening to your medicine as well. Which I think too, especially if you're an entrepreneur, and like it, yeah.
Because energetically, I think we're spread very thin, and we know the good thing about the internet, the bad thing about the internet, but it does spread us really thin. And you think about, I was watching a series the other day, something I'd watched, I don't know, about let's say 15-20 years ago, and it was a series about some young kids, and it just came on, how something comes on the telly and you go, oh cool, I want to watch this is fun. And not once in this sort of 20-minute drama did these kids touch their phones or go on social media or take a picture or do a selfie or do a text. And it's because it didn't exist, like it wasn't there. And so it's kind of like, oh my God, they weren't even having to do that because it didn't exist. So we have layered ourselves with all of these doing things that demand our attention. And actually, when Colleen mentioned that discernment of just being in that space of, okay, what really does need my attention, and actually, I kind of come back to base camp in myself. It's like, okay, well, how does this feel? What do I need to discern? Is this urgent? Does it really need my attention, or can I just let that one go? What's really going to happen if I just let that one go? And obviously we can't let go necessarily, the things which are putting the food on the table and paying the bills. But I think also we can shift the energy that we around them to make them easier for ourselves. Wow.
So I think for me, one of the things is understanding that Reiki itself is the energy. And that's where I think there's a lot of confusion, is that when we think back to Usui, he was a master of so many different practices and abilities. And, you think of even being able to be in a 21-day meditation and, the skill that it would take to be in a 21-day meditation on the top of a mountain. And, the skills that he had and receiving the actual energy that brought him to that place of being with the universe, being with himself, and that Anshin Ditsume of that spiritual peace and purpose and knowingness. And then moving it into the doing, and where he developed then a system that worked with the energy in a way. And his purpose in teaching Reiki the way he was to utilize Reiki to get to that place of Anshin Ditsume, to help people let go of, like you say, some of those external things that grab our attention. And of course, in the 1920s, those were different things than they are now, but probably they had their own things that grabbed their attention or needed their attention or were distractions. And then I think for myself, being very ADD, I actually, in one of my cycles, because I look at the cycles where there are some cycles where it's easier to be in the being, and then other cycles where the doing is compelling. And I was in one of the cycles of doing that was very compelling, and it became a should, that I should be in the being. So I tried, I was just like, it was probably 6 months of it. And suddenly I was like, I want to be in the doing. I'm like, I'm missing all my doing by trying to be in the being, because then I was doing being, It was, okay, now I'm going to do my being.
Am I doing it yet? Am I there? Am I enlightened yet?
Am I being yet? And so that was a really interesting cycle for me of, again, another round of the shoulds, and really understanding, again, that process of, I think it's also being in the cycle that you're in. And it's interesting because we've been talking about this a lot in our next step classes this last week, and the distance Reiki share that we do, and it's been showing up to talk about that medicine wheel understanding of life cycles. And sometimes you're in that cycle of the South where you're in the fullness of that doing, and everything's doing, and it's overwhelming sometimes. Like we love it and we think that's what we want. And then suddenly it's so much to do. And like you say, you pick up all these backpacks of bricks and doing, and you can't reach the left or right when it's out of balance. And then moving into that next cycle of the West of reflection and gathering and the harvest, and that time of preparing to go inward. And then that time of the North, where that is, as you described, where the trees have let go of their leaves and they're in that dormant place, and the seed is beneath the snow and transformation is occurring. And then we go into the East of the new beginnings and that springtime of new beginnings, and each one has its own opportunities and challenges. And again, how we use Reiki. And for me, having, you were talking about standing for an hour with Qigong, and I was thinking, my immediate thought was, can I knit at the same time? What else can I do at the same time?
That's like me. Oh, I'll just send an email. And that'll be fine.
Exactly. And so again, using Reiki for me to navigate through my shoulds of, is this a time of being? And that can be, during the day. I mean, it doesn't mean it has to be months long cycles. It can be a cycle within the day of what is this moment. And also because I wake up awake, I'm not one of these that takes hours to wake up. So, my first thought is check my emails. And then it's no, don't do that. Take some time and wake up. But there's a lot of times for me, that's a big navigation, like really having to, and that's where you said that being Reiki and relying on the energy. I don't have to do Reiki in the moment. I can just invite it to help me through that discernment of, okay, I love that term of what is needed here.
Yeah.
That you talk about.
Well, I think that the wonderful thing about these practices is it is all about navigating our inner truth in the moment. Colleen, I love that example of the shoulds, because it's also okay if you're like, nope, I'm, like when we're all at the beginning of our Reiki practice and all of the things that we're excited about. And, even if we're slow learners, like you said, Fay, Colleen was the opposite, right? Weren't you like?
No, I was a really slow learner.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But in our last episode, we had Christian on, and the whole episode was all about, different business practices. And now that's one of the things that I really love about this podcast is that I feel honored to be able to be on here having conversations with people, because some people are going to really resonate with what he's talking about. And then other people are going to be really resonating about what you're talking about. And that each of this, that everybody gets to be called to their inner truth around their journey and their process. And Colleen, like you said, the cycles, and that none of it's wrong, that it's all right, that we get to be where we are. We get to have, Reiki as a fundamental practice has no belief, like spiritual belief system or religion. I think also that extrapolates out to a lot of different things that, it calls us in all different directions and all different ways with our practices. And, Faye, where you're at, so many people are going to be like, yes. Yeah. And almost this sigh of relief of like, oh, thank you. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum with what Colleen was saying of like, okay, am I being yet? Am I there yet? The sigh of relief of like, oh, okay, I have permission to just go full bore into my doing in the, in this time frame. And, but that we get to, I still think that the foundation of all of it is really that listening, that we get to go into our inner truth, that we get to go into, and like you both talked about how you do that in different ways, and that we get to go into our inner truth and that inner guidance, and guidance from spirit, guidance from the earth, but that inner truth about where we're at, what's authentic, what's genuine for us, and how do we go into that deep listening around where our path is in this moment, and you don't have to go looking far out, like you're saying, Faye, that you're just being in that moment and presence, and that's where you're finding your center and grounding right now. And then also with Christian, just as the example, because we just were talking to him, that it's kind of the opposite. He's like, how do I lay this path out in front of me right now? And just that calling inside, and that Reiki can support us in all of it, our spiritual practices, like you said, that drumbeat for you, helping you that, and Qigong and helping you in that, and that it helps us to listen to our inner truth and where we're at in this moment.
Well, I think
and so often,
too, Faye, that
sorry, Colleen.
what I'd like to add to it is I love the way you're describing the cycle you are in, because I think that in our culture, it is one perceived as one of the more difficult cycles to be in. And it sounds like you are moving through it with so much inner awareness, and that it's because of that constant doing and achieving and accomplishment, that when we get to those cycles of transformation and listening, that it's actually very uncomfortable for most people. And so the way you are describing it, I think, can bring people that are also in this place of moving into this cycle of listening. Like, I'm not to the place of I want to push forward into the future. I really need to be in this being. And it can be a very difficult place to be.
Well, I'm going to share. When you were talking there, I was thinking, I thought of a should, and there's a should that has come up for me, and I'm smiling because it makes me laugh, and you'll get it. I should be enjoying this, as in my Reiki business, my wonderful business, and I write books, and I like that, and it's like, hang on paper, this is what I wanted. This is the business that I wanted. This is the Reiki path that that I might have, or I dreamt of, when I was doing my Reiki master teaching, for example. And now here it is, I'm teaching, and I've got online courses, and I do this, and there's that, I should be enjoying this. And that, that's why I'm laughing, because it's a should. And it's like, well, it's not that I'm not enjoying it, but there's that little seed, that little niggle that said, hang on a second, I need to stop. I need to just, get into that space of listening. And I think what we tend to do as teachers or practitioners is we're so often listening for other people, aren't we? We're listening to the words that someone says when they describe something. We're listening, energetically, with our special senses. We're feeling the way for other people. We're sensing an energy of the room or the students. We're listening for what's going to be topical the next time we come together, etc. And so I think it's very important to, and especially if we're creating, like I have been for the last few years, whether it's courses or books or or even Facebook posts, it's all this boom boom boom, create, and then all gardening and all the stuff that I'm doing. It's like, actually, wow, just to that kindness of going, oh, okay, I think now I'm going to step off that wheel and just listen. But I feel we have to be quite courageous. I invite Reiki to help me, with that courage to go within, because it's much easier to distract ourselves with, if I'm not distracted with all the work stuff, I can distract myself very easily and sit in front of Netflix and cuddle my dog, or I can distract myself by creating another, project in the house to paint a window or a wall or something. So we're very good at distracting, and sort of perhaps not quite, we skirt around the issue for ourselves a little bit, don't we? Because, as you said, Colleen, it is uncomfortable. It can be uncomfortable to kind of say, actually, I don't think this really fits who I am anymore, or I've grown, I've changed shape. I mean, and I think perhaps energetically I may have changed shape, I just wanted to add that, because I think there'll be people out there who go, oh yeah, I've thought that too, about I should like this, because, or I should like it because I'm doing spiritual stuff. It's wholesome, it's good, it's caring, it's compassionate. I should, and obviously when we're in that Reiki space, of course it fills me up. Of course it's full of, I'm connecting with the divine light source. It's just, it's beautiful. But there are, we're talking about kind of just being Reiki. How can I be Reiki and move through the world in that way. And it's almost like, what I feel is, if we can be ourselves and being Reiki, when we move through the world, that's the authentic expression of who we are. So the things which we're meant to do will come towards us. They'll present themselves, because it'll just be the natural connection, like the magnetism of the vibration that you are holding and carrying. So we'll see. I'm excited and also a little bit sort of like, I don't know what I feel like I don't know. I don't really know what the path ahead is. And I know that when I was doing I did a 3-year course in creative shamanism, and this was one of the kind of this is almost like the thing you have to get used to in shamanic practices. You being okay with not actually knowing what's the path ahead. You've got one foot in the known, and then one foot in the unknown, because that's where being in that space of not knowing, you get to know that space, and I don't think it ever becomes comfortable. I think that you realize the space you're in and learn a little bit more about yourself each time you're there.
We're giggling because our next step Reiki classes are the full program is a 3-year course broken into 1-year courses, and it's all Reiki journey techniques. And I say that's one of the most uncomfortable things about the students is like, I don't know where I'm going next. And it's kind of, it's a similar thing. It's like we all want that linear A to, be outline of how exactly it works. And it's like not always, but I think I love how, like you said, it takes courage, but that also, hopefully we continue to change, right? Like hopefully that is something that is okay for us, that it's like, I've always, never wanted to be one of those people that's like, I don't ever change, like that you get to be in this cocoon time frame where you're kind of waiting to see what opens, when it opens, what opens on the other side in this transformation time period. And that in business and spiritual practices, it's like we go through processes that change us as people, and we go through healing that change us as people, and that, like, also hopefully, and some people, it's okay. I don't mean to judge if people don't want to change. That's okay. But that also, I know for me, it's like, I hope I continue to change and grow and evolve and become more and more of what my authentic self and my authentic practice and my authentic business or job, what all of those all of these things that we move towards as people, that we continually listen and grow and evolve. I always think like, yeah, it's okay if we change. And not that I'm giving you permission. It's just this idea about, I don't mean it that way. I just mean that, like, yeah, I hope that continually happens in a beautiful way, even if it's challenging in the moment.
Plus,
what's great about, go ahead, Colleen.
Oh, I was just going to say, we are fortunate and blessed to be in a place that we have the freedom to change and make changes. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead, Faye.
Well, thank you. I was going to say, what's really great about Reiki is that, it's not going to suddenly abandon us. Even if we were to abandon it, it's still with us. So in a sense, Colleen was talking about the cycles. It's like that, and it's kind of spiraling. We will go through phases where we're really, like, you're saying about really revved up, and I want to, like that phase you go through where you just want to give Reiki to everybody and everything, and it's so amazing, and it's going to heal the world, and well, it is. But and then like this phase I'm going through where I'm like, you know what, I'm stepping back from this, I'm going to step back from this, but like Reiki's still with me. And if I then decide, oh, I'm actually going to step back into practitioner stuff, I want to teach in person here again, or I want to do more one-to-one retreat style things, that, which is something I'm thinking about. But yeah, it's there for me, and so I think that's really wonderful. It doesn't abandon us, Reiki. And obviously, when we're connecting with clients, we're learning and we're gaining experience of that relationship with Reiki. But connecting with Reiki every day for our kind of personal development is just, I think that supports us to change. And then we'll be shown kind of when's the right time to kind of take another step with it in a different direction, perhaps, or somewhere we've been before. It's a kind of dance, isn't it? I think we're just dancing.
Isn't that true?
I was laughing at when you were talking about that phase of like chasing everybody down. I can give you Reiki, and when I was in that phase of it, and I guess I still am, but just a little bit more subtly. Or maybe not. But Robyn was a teenager at the time, and she'd be like, "Mom, sit on your hands." Chasing her down and her friends in the middle of some of her basketball games. I can help. I'll give them Reiki. She'd be like, "Mom."
So embarrassing.
Yeah. So embarrassing. And now it's taken on a different form, I guess. But that cracked me up. I was all about it everywhere I went. And, now I have more discernment about waiting for people to ask me. I put out the nuggets of, well, this could help, but then letting people ask. Well, Fay, I do want to hear about your book. So I know that, let's talk about your Reiki drumming.
So thank you. Yeah, the book really is, do you know what? I'll tell you the story. So the story is, I had a dream, and in the dream, I was telling one of my shamanic teachers, I was telling her that my next book was all about shamanic practice with the drum and Reiki. And I got out of the dream, I woke up, and I'm like, oh, that was, it was one of those moments. It was a very clear dream. It was really vivid. It was in a different dream space to those weird ones you have where you don't make sense of anything. And I told my husband about the dream, and he just looked at me and he said, "Have you written a book about that yet?" So he kind of already thought that I'd written a book about the drumming and Reiki. And so I thought, okay, I need to write this book. And obviously, because I've been teaching, so I've been practicing shamanic work since about 2008 or 2007. And I learned the Reiki drum technique in 2009. So then I just started naturally, holding growing drumming groups and so on and so forth, and teaching and working with clients. So it really wasn't, in a sense, too difficult for me to put together, because I was really wanted to share, my practices and ways that we can use the drum in Reiki practice, and about shamanic journeying and how we can do that. And my favorite part really is about connecting heaven and earth. So really, I love to work with the drum to connect with the earth, to connect with the elements and the plants and so on. So it's got information really on it, kind of like, in a sense that how we work with the drum personally and how we forge that relationship with our drum, and then obviously how we access information through the shamanic journey with the drum and Reiki, and lots of different ways we can do that. And then there is a section on working, how would you work with how could you introduce the drum for client practice? How would that work? What does that look like? And I include pieces around shamanic running Reiki drum circles, or maybe how would you introduce the drum, because this, what happens is, you go on a course or whatever, and you come back, or you're excited about your drum, and you want to go to a Reiki share, and you're like, well, I want to tell everyone about my drum. How can I do that? So I've got some ideas in there about how you can bring your drum into a Reiki share to share it with others. And there's lots of different ideas. I work very creatively with both Reiki and shamanic practice, so it's full of my stories, my experiences with clients, and just sort of these nuggets that I've picked up along the way, because the drum, it's such a tool for connection. And so for me, when we combine it with Reiki, which is this, like, this beautiful frequency, we really help shift the frequency, or really, I should say, we bring this beautiful orchestra that we are as humans back into balance and harmony. And I really love. So what's really great when we add the drum into Reiki practice is we've got Reiki, and we know the benefits of Reiki. We've got the drum, which when we use it in a shamanic way, it really alters the consciousness. It shifts brainwaves. It helps us connect. It helps us to open to the shamanic world and other spirit guides. So we've got this element, but then we've also got the sound healing component, which can either be very relaxing, or it can really be deep healing for the client, in terms of really kind of I find for shifting, like stagnation, for instigating change, for almost like giving someone a drum boot up the arse, for want of a better, kick up the butt is what it does, the drum, sometimes, for people. And for me, it just expanded my whole kind of way of looking at the world. I think really suddenly things became very open, and I really felt like I had been drumming for a very long time. I felt it in my bones. And so that, I'm going to hold the book up. That's the book, Shamanic Reiki Drumming. That is the book. So it's really, certainly if someone's a beginner, then it'll give them a great idea of what to, or if someone's been given a drum, they're like, what do I do with my drum? This will give you some ideas of how to get started. And even for people who are already attuned to drums, who've already been working perhaps with the Reiki drum technique, there'll be some really interesting stories and case studies and ideas in there, because I've kind of, I think for me, what happened is when I did the Reiki drum technique, it opened a can of worms for me, because there were so many questions that I had, and this one weekend of training just didn't cut it. I was like, wow, I'm kind of hooked. And so that was kind of what took me on my path of shamanism. And obviously, because we are Reiki, I don't do my shamanic practice without Reiki. I can't. It's me. If I'm doing a journey, then I'm taking Reiki with me. Reiki doesn't leave me just because I'm going, no, I'm doing my shamanic work now. It's all part of it. And that's why the book, I call it sort of Shamanic Reiki or Shamanic Reiki Drumming, because I felt that I was teaching shamanism. It must have been probably a few years ago. I was teaching shamanism, and I felt in a way that I wasn't quite being authentic, because I thought, well, I can teach you shamanism, but because I'm a Reiki practitioner, I feel that actually there's a little bit more, or almost like there's something I'm not telling you. If I'm just sort of going through the motions of this is some core shamanic techniques that you might do. So that is why I think the combination of the two has flowed very naturally and very innately for me as a Reiki practitioner. And so really that's what I wanted to share in the book. So for anyone listening who thinks, I'm called to the drum, or I've been enjoying the drum, or even if people are wondering, how does that connect? What's it got to do with Reiki? Then give the book a read, because it shares my insight into that. I'm excited about it. Yeah, because I really feel that the drum it just brings another element to Reiki, just like plants do. But also at the same time, there's, when I practice, I think people would be surprised at how much just sort of, if you like, classic self Reiki I do. I don't always have to drum. And it's so, and anything, any treatment that I would do with a client would always be a mixture. I would never just be, you're never going to drum with someone for an hour. I mean, that's just exhausting for absolutely everybody on so many levels. It's always combined with this classic Reiki, bringing it into, home base, connecting in with that lovely divinity. And then really, I find for me, what the drum has done is it almost, because of the way it shifts your the brain waves, and it gives you this sense of expanded consciousness and connection to the unified field that you get from Reiki also. But for me, it sort of fast tracked things a bit. It just sort of clicked. And so my intuition, my sort of inner guidance, if you like, really opened up when I started to drum. And so that kind of propelled me forward with my Reiki path. So yeah, there you go. I've given it a plug.
So it sounds like for anyone from the beginner, there's the how-to in the book as well.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. Even from, there's some advice on there about what to look for if you're looking for a drum. And, because these days we've obviously got the synthetic drums, which are great, which are vegan. And then we've also got hide drums. So there's different, and how we can even play it. We don't have to play the drum with a drum beater. We can play it differently. So I've just got some tips, all things like that I share. And how you might want to stand. And actually, that's where there is a little bit of Qigong in the book, in terms of like, how would you stand to be in a really powerful position to be able to play your drum? Or even there's one piece in there where I've got a client, I'm suggesting you lie a client on the earth, and then you can drum, connect to the earth. You can beam Reiki, there's all sorts of things you can do. So that kind of gives you an idea of how creative the book is. Because obviously, it's not what I didn't want to do. It's that the Reiki drum technique, which is taught, by lots of practitioners, this isn't their manual. This is my experience of working with it. You know what I mean? Because it's not for me to share all the ways that they teach. And there obviously are specific bits that I'm called to more than others, and that's definitely really, again, the plant world, the natural world, the elements, and so forth. So I'm really proud of it. My third book. I mean, I just think, who knew? So hopefully I'll be chatting to you in a few years' time, going, I've got another book. We'll see.
I love that. Well. And probably Reiki drumming for me was one of the first things that I learned and practiced, because I actually was in shamanic training for 3 years before I received Reiki. And of course, the drum is such an important part of those practices. And then learning to imbue the drum with Reiki, so it's actually delivering the Reiki energy. The sound is delivering it, whether that is for an extraction technique to remove negative energy, or to empower a person with the Reiki energy that empowers their life force. And like you say, that heartbeat and connection with the heartbeat of the earth, the heartbeat of creation, and really aligning their rhythms and their heartbeat with the earth and with creation. So for me, it has been also another tool that I think is so beneficial, and some people are called to it, others are not called to it. I have different drums of different types of hides. I've made my own drums. And for me, a lot of times, because I live in Oregon with the weather that we have here, these synthetic drums are very helpful, because you know, if the weather is rainy, your drum is flat. It's a thump, and it's hard to drum. Yeah, I've had some of
they're a great invention. These
They
synthetic
really
straw, they are for Scottish weather too. Really, the damp drift days. Yeah, you need them.
I was thinking that too.
And for people that prefer to have like a vegan option too.
Yeah.
One of my most profound Reiki experiences, that big training for me, was with my drum. And I was at the Reiki retreat in New York and presenting the Reiki gratitude ceremony. And I was sick to my stomach. I was so nervous. And so I was praying and using Reiki and doing everything. I had sent it in advance to try to move beyond my anxiety around it. The ceremony was still 2 days away. And I mean, I was like suffering. Had so much anxiety about it. And I was drumming out under the moon. Michael Baird had created a drumming circle, and we were out under the moon, and I was just drumming and, asking the drum to just take that anxiety and really connecting in with the moon and, asking for help with this nervousness. And I heard a voice come in behind me, and it said, "It's not about you. So you're just there to bring gratitude for the people. None of it is about you." And that moment and that teaching has been foundational for my work, my teaching, my understanding at the times that I am uncomfortable or I am nervous or, in a life stage that I'm uncomfortable, because it's not always just Reiki related. It has really, like, that drum in that moment brought so much of what I needed to know for my life about it's not about you. So powerful. So I encourage people to, and you talked about the book is on the big place with an A. We can say Amazon. Okay. But the book isn't out yet, right? Or it will be right about
it will be in September. Airs. Yeah. So it should be out more or less at the time that people are listening to this. And if it's not quite ready, then you can just pre-order it, and it will come probably in a couple of weeks, because it's nearly there. Gone through all the cogs, and this is the sort of strange thing about when books are published through a traditional publisher, is that a year ago I handed in that manuscript, and we were editing it in January. And, and with the busyness of everything, I mean, sometimes you think, oh my God, what on earth did I write about? I mean, luckily this is stuff that I teach, I know really well, it's not stuff I've made up. So, but you do feel quite removed by it by the time it comes out, and I have to kind of jog my memory sometimes as to, okay, well, what did I put in that chapter? Which exercise did I put in? Because, the process is so long and stretched. And often I did find this actually with my first book. I felt that I was a different person by the time the book had come out. I don't think that's the case for me now, but I know that with the first book, that's really what my experience was. And I thought, God, I've grown a bit from that, actually. And certainly I know with my first book, if I read it, I go, oh, I wouldn't have written it quite like that now. But that's the beauty of growing, like we were saying, we're changing and we're growing, and it's all part of our journey. Yeah.
I'm glad to hear about the length of time from turning in the manuscript to it actually completing, because we have been working with the animal Reiki manuals for quite a while and going through the editing process and really getting to the nitty-gritty of the editing. And we've been still teaching with draft versions of it. so that, we can go ahead and continue with the process and continue with the classes and teaching it. But that's interesting to hear that is normal for the editing to take that long and the publishing to take that long.
Yeah. And especially with, with the energy of your animal Reiki will be kind of building and showing itself to you the more that it's experienced and shared. So it doesn't surprise me at all that you're going to have these or just areas that you feel that you need to pause on, or just when something doesn't feel quite like it's shaping up. That's actually the hard thing, isn't it, about when you're producing something, is knowing when to stop and knowing, like, does this feel complete? Is there something missing? I was journeying and meditating a lot on that with the book. With actually this is quite a fun story. I was journeying on what else is needed. I'd come to the end of the thing. I was just probably a few weeks away from submission day, and I was just like, I think it's finished, but I'm not sure. And I was having the self-doubt creep in, of, oh no, I don't know, I'm not sure, and that inner critic. So I did a journey, and actually it was a very blissful, joyful journey. So it was all feeling very good. And then what I did is I think what I'd been doing is I was listening to a drumming track that was on my phone. So I wasn't drumming, I was just receiving and doing some self-Reiki at the same time. So then I picked up my telephone where that drumming track had been playing. And then another song, had just kind of decided to play after it, which I have never seen since this song. It must have just been picked by some sort of shuffle. And the words of the song were something like nothing else, or nothing is needed. Nothing else is needed. Or it was just so magical that I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to take that. So I listened to the song and I did a screenshot of it so I could remember, what it was. But I thought, you know what, you're complete. This is complete. You've done this. And that was that. And then I felt ready, like, okay, I felt supported in just like submitting it and saying, yeah, I can let that go now.
That's so great, because I always, in those instances, I'm always like, how did they orchestrate that to get that song on in that moment that you needed to hear? How did that pull, like you say, it comes to you? So good. I love that. Well, any updates about your plant medicine books or journey around that you want to share?
Well, the journey. So, in terms of the plant medicine, there is a course online which is called Plant Spirit Reiki Level 1. That's available for enrollment anytime. But also, I run a yearly Plant Spirit Summer School, which is here in Scotland in the beautiful garden space. And it's really the opportunity to kind of deep dive, and that's kind of where the learning begins, really. It's just I've run 2 in the last 2 years so far, and they kind of shape themselves. They're small groups. We're connecting with the plants, we're connecting with Reiki, and it's about really, it's like the listening to the plants and opening up to the way that they are guiding the individual to work with them. And I find, as a facilitator, it's a really magical space to hold, because each practitioner is very much making their connection with the plants and Reiki, and for their personal or professional practice, they're really making it their own. And that's a joy. So that happens every June, July at the moment. And also, as you mentioned earlier, Colleen, I do have a yurt here. We do have people stay over in the garden space. And again, that's something else that I'm running, is these private retreats. You can come and stay in the yurt and do your own thing, or you can come and stay and have a private retreat. So that'll be an area which will be, I'm just listening and I've been in that yurt and I've been asking, what is needed? what needs to happen here? And again, that's the question that I'm asking in the garden space, always, really, always asking the plants, what is needed.
Is your summer school over a lot of period, or is it like you can come for a week or two to do the summer?
Yeah, I've decided now. It was kind of broken up, but now it's just really like a week. It's
so people
to make
can
those
travel,
so
come
that
and take the summer
overseas,
school, because I'm like, well, what is this?
Right.
Like a week. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
we had a lady from Canada this year, which was amazing. And actually, yeah, a couple of people from the US were visiting last year, and we did private retreats there. So, and someone else is coming this October. So again, I don't really make much of that as an offering on my website, but maybe that will be something that I do focus my energies on. Having said, oh yeah, no, I don't really do one-to-one things. I think the thing that I'm moving towards really is I really love holding space for people, and I love to see a transformation, and I love to work with plants. And one of the things which I wanted to move away from working as a practitioner is, the thing that niggles me most of all is when you just do one treatment with someone and then you might never see them again, and you don't. And I love to work, if you like, on a planned sort of schedule with people, so you can see just see the transformation. And I know that obviously if somebody comes here for a one-to-one retreat, you just see that, you sort of see stuff almost like falling off them, and so from on a personal level, that is it's pretty a privilege to witness that transformation. So yeah, that's why I'm kind of keen to bring people here, and then in a way the garden space does most of the work anyway, and I just have to stand there and hold it. So that'll be what I'm hopefully be moving into offering for the next sort of year ahead and stuff.
Well, Faye, before you started talking about that, I wrote down the word retreats. So just so you know, I was probably picking up on you.
Yeah, it's sort of been bubbling, and you know what? You just have to trust, don't you? Mm-hmm. That when at the right time, things start to align, opportunities arise, and I think actually this is one of the things I've learned, is that because I'm quite I don't know how you say, I have the sight, like I often see things. I get mistaken. I think they're happening. They should be happening now, next week. They should be happening in September. But the thing that I've seen is maybe happening in a year's time, or or 2 years time, or so I've learned now that actually I've just got to take a breath. If what we say in Scotland is the saying that they have here is, what's yours can't pass you by. And so that is what you kind of, I always take a breath and think, okay, so when the time's right, if it's right, if it's meant to be, it's going to work itself out. It's going to work and flow with ease and joy. So that's where I'm at, that listening, like we said from the beginning.
Such a great place to be. And like I say, it sounds like you're doing really well with being in this cycle of being able to listen and use Reiki to help you do that, to just be in the place you're in, which sounds so lovely. Now we all want to go to Scotland.
Yeah.
And what part of Scotland are you in again?
So I'm in what's known as the Kingdom of Fife. So it's outside of Edinburgh. It's about 45 minutes to the north of Edinburgh is where I stay. So you have to cross the bridge. There's the Firth of Forth, which is the river that comes in to Edinburgh. You have to cross that bridge, and then from here north is to the Highlands, basically. So I'm sort of in that the bit before the Highlands. Yeah.
And you're saying Fife, Fife?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Fife. Yeah. the ancient capital of Scotland many, many, many years ago. But, you know, I mean, that's anyone listening who's longing to come to Scotland. I mean, it's steeped in history, you know, we can't get enough of castles here, you know. So it is a magical place to be, actually. And I feel while I was very sad to leave Nova Scotia when we ran our flower farm, and it took me many years to come back to land, to sort of let go of that, and that identity that I'd had as that flower farmer and that grower and that Reiki person with the plants. You know, coming to land here, you know, yeah, it's great. It's great to put these roots down and feel supported by the land here, because there's it's a very magical place to be, certainly.
Were you born there?
No, my family are I was born in the south of England, but my family are from here. Yeah.
Okay.
But actually, my family are from slightly further south, but still in Scotland. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, we will also put your information in the show notes. Thank you so much, Fay. But I do want to read that off one more time. Let me find this back up. Your book is Shamanic Reiki Drumming.
Yeah.
Right? Yep. Just want to make sure. And then you have 2 other books as well about plants and Reiki. You can find all of Fay's information at fayjohnston.com. It's FayJohnstone. And so it's fayjohnston.com. Her Facebook is Fay J, just the letter J, meditation. Insta is Plants That Speak, and YouTube is Fay Johnstone. So thank you so much. We have just loved catching up with you and hearing your process and your journey. And it's been an honor to, you know, have you talk about that here with us and with our audience. We really appreciate you doing that and sharing your authenticity and you know, vulnerability as well, I would say too, probably a little bit. Yeah, thank you. As far as Colleen and I are concerned, you can find us at ReikiLifestyle.com. We always have classes coming up. So human Reiki, animal Reiki, and then, you know, I think our Tuesday morning distance Reiki share. That's free on Tuesday mornings at 9:30 a.m. Pacific. You can find that on our website as well.
And I'll just add that I'm teaching Karuna Reiki with William Rand in Hana, Hawaii in November. So that one. And our next step classes, actually, by the time this airs, our next step classes start again in January of 2024.
We'll be talking
adding that little tidbit.
Yeah. All right. Thank you all so much. And just
you.
Have a wonderful and blessed day.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.